All right. Hey everyone, it's Janine with Jet Travel. Welcome back. It is Travel Tuesday. I'm excited to be back. And this last week in October, who knew what the heck happened in October? Sorry for being on hiatus for a couple weeks. I just got back from Iceland with our group, which was phenomenal. And I will be sharing more about that coming up. And then, and then we turn around and it's October. But we're going to end October off with a great note because we have Hayden with the New Zealand Tourism Board here today to talk about everything New Zealand. Hey Hayden, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, kia ora, Janine. Thanks for taking the time to have us. I look forward to giving everyone an update.
Awesome, perfect. So Hayden, one thing we often have been talking about at the beginning of our travel talks right now is just COVID and how it is and what it all means. Right now, we can't go to New Zealand yet. So we're going to kind of keep that on the light side because hopefully you'll be back with us in the first quarter of next year because hopefully by then we'll have a little bit more information on that.
Sounds perfect. Happy to give you a really quick overview of where it is at. Obviously, our border remains closed to all international visitors. It's not just a North American specific thing. With the health and safety of New Zealanders at the forefront of that. We're in between phase 1 and 2, which is getting as many New Zealanders vaccinated as possible. And that's been really successful. As of today, we've had 87% of the population that are eligible have had the first vaccine. They're working towards a 90% range just for internal travel, and then we'll get some clarity as what risk profiles look like for international visitors there. But we'll keep you informed so you can keep your clients up to date.
That sounds awesome. We're really looking forward to that because we can't wait to get back to your islands. So let's start out by Hayden. Not everyone might be familiar with New Zealand, why we should go there, where exactly it's at. So can you kind of fill us in on a little bit more about why we should put New Zealand on our list to visit?
I need too much time, but I can keep it very top line. So obviously a beautiful country down there on the bottom of the South Pacific, split over 2 islands. For me, I think the most fascinating thing, especially when I talk to North American visitors, is just the amazing change in geography, right? We've got these 2 little islands floating down there in the middle of nowhere, theoretically, which is the biggest barrier, I think, for North Americans coming down to see us. But this geography changes. Within 1,000 miles from the top of the North Island to the bottom of the South Island, we go from these golden sand beaches, and next thing you're in a geothermal plateau with bubbling mud and geysers, and next thing you're out on a landscape not like the one on the screen with like I said, geothermal, and then we go into wine, and then we've got to get to the South Island, these huge mountains and these cross-thatched farmlands with glaciers, all within this 1,000 miles. And I think that's what blows people's minds, is that how can all of that exist in such a small place? But like anywhere, the most amazing thing, it's all great having landscapes, but it's the people. We have these warm, welcoming New Zealanders that just love having visitors from around the world coming down and sharing their stories and learning from them at the same time.
Oh, cool. Wonderful. So you just talked a little bit about like why someone would want to come, why you would want to go there, and why it's so cool, because it is a compact country, but it's not like a compact country where you can go and expect to see everything in just one location.
This is very true. You need to allow time. And I think that's the biggest misnomer or misunderstanding from this market. People get this ideology that it's a bucket list. I'm going that far. I need to see New Zealand, Australia, and the South Pacific. And by the way, I've got 10 days. And poor Janine and her staff want to rip their hair out and say, it's not long enough. Can you find more time? And the reality is, yes, it's only 1,000 miles. And some of you might think you can drive that for Thanksgiving. But the reality is, when you get down to New Zealand, you can't drive through a volcano or over a glacier. You need to slow down, take it in, give times for these organic relationships to build, meet these people, get off the beaten track. It's not a flop and drop destination. You don't just go to one place, unpack once and sit back. I guess in a cruise sense, you can feel that a little bit, but more so it's about getting out and exploring and seeing these changeable landscapes and meeting the people as you go.
Yeah, no, awesome. And one thing I will say, I was in New Zealand. It was a very long time ago during college. So just like 2 years ago, I like to continue to say, even though that's a lie. And we were on the South Island, but there was something about the New Zealanders, and you guys are known as Kiwis, correct?
Correct. Yep. The kiwi is our national icon. It's a small bird, a flightless bird. It had no predators, and now it's very much protected because it's been endangered as predators have come into the country. It's not just a fruit. So we're colloquially known as Kiwis, and that's a nice colloquialism. Some have some not so nice backstories, but we are very proud to be Kiwis and be called Kiwis. So that's who we are.
Yeah, no, awesome. And I love the landscape picture you have up right now because I feel like a lot of destinations, the people really bring it alive and make it a part of enhance the experience. And I feel like New Zealand was that way for me at least.
Yeah, and that's a big part of our storytelling as well, with our experiences, even just an accommodation are very strategically dotted through the country to showcase the landscapes, really unique micro landscapes of which they're in. And then the people, the food, the experiences that you have there are very much based around the grandeur of the landscapes around you. And it's up to you what sort of adventure you want to do. As we know, adventure is very subjective. Some people might want to go and feel like they need to cross country across these mountains or heli ski in them or whatever it might be. And others are happy just sitting here having a glass of wine, looking over the lake up at them. That's enough adventure for them.
No, awesome. So since you're talking about the different adventures you can have, there are a lot of different ways we can see New Zealand. Are there any ways that you see like pros and cons or ways that you would suggest people to actually take advantage of it, of seeing the countryside?
As always, it depends a little bit on their time, their skill set, their budget as to those things as well. We do encourage self-drive through New Zealand. It is a great way to see the country. We drive on what we call the other side of the road. It's not the wrong side of the road. It does take a little bit of getting used to. But we've got some great resources we'll share with you just to make you proactive rather than reactive when the first time you see livestock on the road or come to a one-way bridge or a roundabout. You don't have to panic. We do see rental car signs and we're very courteous drivers. And we also ask that when you come and self-drive, you're a courteous driver as well. But self-driving, what it does, it gives you those times to have those unique interactions where you might stop between experience A and experience B at a small little roadside cafe. You'll meet a great storyteller who will say, you have to come, I'll take you fly fishing, or come to my parents' house and we'll go out have something to eat, or these really organic experiences that just happen quite naturally in New Zealand because we are so inquisitive and welcoming. So that's a great way to get around, but we have a great flight network as well. The longest domestic flight in the country is less than 2 hours. And it always blows people's mind when they get the pleasure of hosting through the country of how simplified our flying process is. Like a lot of our domestic flights don't have security to go through. And so Americans tend to panic and think they have to be at the airport 2 hours early, where in reality, we're driving there 45 minutes early and they start that panic. But we're still the first ones on the plane. So a nice change or step back in time with that. We have a great scenic rail network for those that don't want to drive, some beautiful scenic rail journeys we can dive into more next time as well. We have the ferry that connects the two islands, and then everything from small planes, yachts, boats, electric vehicles, everything in between.
Got it. Cool. So there is no shortages of way to explore New Zealand.
This is definitely true. And yeah, like I said, it's nice being driven as well. Small group tours, we think obviously post-pandemic are going to be really popular way to see this landscape but incorporate that human element. And having a New Zealand driver show you their backyard and share their personalized stories is a pretty special way to get around.
Got it. And since we're bringing you back, I know you can't tell me everything right now, but if you could give me like a couple highlights of what are some destinations or experiences that are kind of unique to New Zealand that people should consider when planning their next adventure.
Yeah, obviously there's a very long list, but yeah, if we keep it down to things that are distinctly New Zealand, one of the distinctly New Zealand things is Māori people, our Māori culture, our Indigenous people, and your ability to engage or interact with them in an experience. And so a special one for me, which incorporates another favorite, which is food and wine, is the hangi. So a hangi is a traditional Māori way of preparing food in an earthen oven. So they literally dig the big hole, put down the hot rocks, put in the food, put the hot rocks back on the top, and then you have this hours of time, but that's deliberate. It's a way for you to interact. They have this really great concept called kōrero and kai. So kōrero in Māori means conversation, kai is food, and it's really important for them that this is shared together. So if you're a visitor to the country, you get the opportunity to see how this food is prepared, and while it's being cooked, have these really great conversations with the Indigenous people of the land, get ideologies for their relationship to the land, their concepts, is a really special, very distinctly New Zealand experience.
All right, cool, love it. All right, so is there any an experience or something that people sometimes will overlook with visiting New Zealand?
At times, I think a lot of that is to do with either seasonality or the time they have available. I think a lot of North Americans look at New Zealand and go, especially maybe if they're sitting in Wisconsin like yourself, buried in snow, it's quite appealing to be down in New Zealand between December and March. I spent the last 15 months in South Dakota, I know exactly what it felt like to want to escape that snow at certain times when I wasn't out enjoying it. And so we get a lot of North American visitors coming during those months. But I think what they overlook is the opportunity to come down during other times of the year as well. We have beautiful winter season where it looks a lot like the image you have in front of us. The snow seems to stay on the hill, so it's not logistically getting in your way. Our lows are still higher than your highs at that time of year, and you still have the ability to be out in shorts and a t-shirt, on a bike, seeing our trails. All of our experiences are generally open, and you don't have anyone else there to compete with. So I think that's an overlook. And the other one is the time available. The average stay days for North Americans pre-pandemic was about 12 days. About 16 out of Canada, they get a few extra days off, and we're hoping to change that post. We don't know what it's going to look like to go between multiple countries or any challenges that may or may not present. So we hope people who align with what New Zealand has to offer come down, take their time, do it slowly. They've got time saved up, they might have some money saved up, they've got the ability to potentially work on the road again. And so you're not going to miss as much if you've got more time. I think people look at the geography and start sacrificing one thing for another based on the time they've got to get there. I think it's up to the individual to prioritize what's really important to them and then make sure that it can work within an itinerary.
No, I agree with you, because I always say it's like playing the would you rather game. So like if you have an itinerary and you're like, okay, there are 10 things I feel like I want to do. I only have time for like maybe 7 of them. So then it's like, what one would you rather do? And it's kind of like Sophie's choice with a trip, which we should never do after living through COVID. So
this is true.
Right? Okay. So let's talk about food, because you kind of talked about wine a little bit, which New Zealand is known for its delicious wine. So besides wine, let's talk about food and other beverages. So what are some things that are kind of distinctly New Zealand that when we come and visit, we need to have that experience?
Yeah, I touched on the hangi already, which is the cultural side. I think the big thing for New Zealand is about fresh, seasonal, sustainable produce. Some of the things that I miss now that I'm based stateside is what we call kai moana, which is seafood. And so you're never more than 90 minutes from the ocean. So we have amazing access to seafood, but some of that, once again, is really seasonal. So Bluff oysters. Bluff is a very small town at the bottom of the South Island with some very cold waters off the base of it. But because of that, it produces these huge, delicious, flavoursome oysters, but they're only available during the oyster season, which is March through August. Not dissimilarly, we have some unique delicacies. We have these little things called whitebait, which is a translucent fish that makes its way up rivers at certain times of year, and you can only catch them for about 4 months of year, but they're caught. If you can catch them, they're the price of gold, just about. And you go and just have it cooked for you very simply as a whitebait fritter or a whitebait patty. But once again, it's very seasonal and it just needs a little squeeze of orange juice. And we talked about beverages. Our wines are obviously well known. We're getting very well known for our microbrews and breweries as well. We have an area at the top of the South Island called Nelson, and a smaller area within that called Motueka. And the more time I spend in the States, people are really starting to publicize Motueka hops as sort of microbrew collaborations. So we've got a lot of little mum and pop breweries that are popping up, and based on where they are geographically, incorporating all those localized flavors as well.
So cool. Yeah. And that's what I love. I love destinations like New Zealand where if you drive an hour and a half, you can have a totally different experience based upon what is local to that particular area. So I am a fan of that. Obviously, I have a food problem, but you know, it's not a bad problem to have. Okay, I'm going to skip some of these questions because, like I said, we're going to bring you back. So we talked a little bit about the best time, because often you guys are kind of on opposite seasons of us, because you're in the New Zealand's in the southern hemisphere, we're in the northern hemisphere, so they're flip-flopped from us. But is there really a best season? Like you just said, it's pretty tempered even in the winter season compared to with Midwest, at least.
Yeah, we don't get those huge extremes. And like you said, we're the opposite. And you've got to think that the opposite applies geographically as well. If I go further north from here, I get to Canada, which gets colder, and Mexico, which gets warmer, right? The opposite is true. Whereas if you're in New Zealand, we talk about the winterless north. So that area north of Auckland, which is the major arrival city for all North American flights, if you go up into Northland, we talk about the winterless north. So we're thinking golden sand beaches, world-class diving, fishing, stand-up paddleboarding, and the ability to experience that year-round. And as you make your way south, it starts to get cooler. But we don't have those extremes. For me, it's kind of those shoulder season months, right? So I talked about the busiest being December through kind of March. For me, I like kind of October, November. You might have that remnants of snow. You're going to have the wildflowers in bloom. You're going to have the lambs running around to start spring. And then you've still got the ability to be outside during the day, but you might be cuddled up by the fire with a great glass of Central Otago Pinot Noir at 6 o'clock at night instead of 9 o'clock at night. But you're not going to be competing with others from around the world either.
Okay, gotcha. No, that makes total sense. I love knowing that little insider stuff of when you can go there, still have really great experiences, but not have to like elbow the crowds. So, because that's always something that a lot of people look for. They're like, okay, I'm good with going. I'm good with if it's a little bit different weather-wise. I just don't want 100,000, like a massive quantity of my newest best friends there.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. So, Hayden, I'm going to actually stop with questions right there, but I know you put together some kind of informational and some videos for us. So I'm going to let you kind of take it and then pop in if I have any questions.
It's a great option. Yeah, feel free to interject. I just wanted to start, this image that we've got up is not just a still image, it's a little video, and it's at a time when we can't welcome you guys down to New Zealand. We just got some unique New Zealanders to tell a little bit of a story about why they love New Zealand and kind of plant the seed and excite you. So I'll start by playing that, and then we can just jump ahead to a couple little things.
Do you need to turn up your volume?
Sorry, are you not hearing that? I might have to reshare and give you the rights to put that on. So okay. Let's jump ahead past the video if we're not hearing it.
No. I'll share it later. You can
exactly.
totally send
We'll
it to
share
me
it
and I'll
next
put it
time
up
or later. So nice and easy. But thanks for bringing that up. So I guess the best thing to do for you guys is to address the barriers. I know you could be coming in from anywhere globally, realistically, but we'll focus on North America. And obviously this map looks pre-COVID, but the biggest barrier to New Zealand is distance, or at least your perception of how far away we are. Because you cross this amazing thing called the International Dateline, people think it takes 2 days on an aircraft to get there. But thankfully, pre-COVID, we were spoiled with new connectivity. We're very helpful that connectivity comes back online. And that just makes it a lot easier for you to say, all of these flights here, even the ones that say coming soon, and all an international, just a one-stop flight, a direct flight into Auckland with no stops. And we think post-pandemic, that's going to be obviously preferable, just to be able to jump on a plane and wake up in paradise. So lots of ways for you to be able to do that. And we're working with the airlines to ensure that this connectivity comes back nice and quickly as well. One thing we also touched on is when we're there, the other barriers, how easy it is to get around, right? And so this just gives you a quick snapshot. You've got a picture 1,000 miles from top to bottom. Look at that, it's just a sample of our domestic flight network. So some of these little flights from Auckland up into the windless north, up to Kerikeri, the top of the North Island there I talked about, these are sort of 35 minutes up and down in a little prop plane, as simple as it can be. We talked about ways to get around. When I say driving, you didn't have to just take a small rental car. We've got an amazing electric car network. They've taken the time during the pandemic to ensure there's great charging stations and logistics to be able to support that. And our major rental cars companies can make that a reality for you. And it's great for a sustainable mindset as well. But other people, you'd say motorhome, we'd say camper van, or the other way around. I always get it confused. But to jump in a camper van, take your time, and it just enables to slow down, park next to some locals, get to know them, share some stories. But not dissimilarly, I've been lucky enough to stay at luxury lodges in New Zealand, and you go to the back car park and there's a lineup of camper vans because they want to treat themselves. You want to spoil yourself. You're on vacation as well. So you have that opportunity to feel like you're roughing a little bit, maybe with the family in the back of the camper and cooking sausages over a fire one night. The next night be having a 6-course degustation dinner, maybe with the kids being watched by someone else.
Yeah, no, it's a great option to be able to kind of change it up if you do a self-drive or if you do a camper style where you're like, hey, we're going to camp for like 4 nights, and then for 2 nights we're going somewhere where someone's going to serve us.
Yeah, we're seeing that more and more, right? People want that, they can explore, they feel like they're off there, they're meeting the locals, but yeah, you are on vacation at the end of the day. So to sit down with great food and wine. I mentioned the scenic rail networks. This is just some of the landscapes they go through. This one here is the Coastal Pacific. No, it's the Transalpine, sorry, which goes from Christchurch. If you can see my little map up there, Christchurch in the middle of the South Island, from one side to the other. So it goes through great big Arthur's Pass. So you go through tunnels, snowy mountain ranges, and then down over these beautiful braided rivers to the rugged west coast. Just try to think about some ways that your clients might want to experience New Zealand post-pandemic. We know you call it, in New Zealand, we just say walking. Americans call it hiking. Even if we do the length of the country, it's just a walk to a Kiwi. But we do have now what's called the Te Araroa Trail, which is a walking track which literally goes not just similar to say the Appalachian Trail, goes the full length of the country. So you can choose to take months off and go and do that properly and rugged, or you can just do sections thereof. As you make your way through the country, you can look up where that starts and stops and just see those changeable landscapes as you go along. But alongside that, we've got now 10 great walks, one of which is open during the pandemic, so it hasn't even been used by our international visitors yet. So a great opportunity to get out there and do those either guided or self-guided. So you can do them to the level where you just take your day pack each day, your bag goes in front of you, you've got a hot shower, great wine and food at the end of the day, or you can do it, pack everything in and out as well. But once again, safety is a priority. We want it, they are well marked. We don't have any scary animals. We don't even have, there's no snakes in New Zealand. There's a poisonous spider you couldn't find if you had to. There's no mountain lions, so you don't have to keep your food out of the reach of bears. So you feel very comfortable in nature.
Nice. Nope, that's awesome. And cycling. So for our bikers out there.
Yep, it's a wonderful way to see the country. And obviously the introduction of e-bikes has made cycling a lot more accessible. So any trails that were previously kind of looked daunting, you put an e-bike on and you're at the top of the hill with this, like same effort as to go flat. So because of that, we've seen lots of great rides. There's lots of single tracks, double tracks, and just short scenic rides as well, where you can go with a guide. Some of the most popular in our vineyard country. So jumping on with a guide, either biking yourself or sitting on the back of the bike, and there's multiple small mum and pop cellar doors next to some artisan food producers, and it's a beautiful way to lose an afternoon.
Awesome. Oh yes, we're going to talk experiences, and then I'm going to stop you because we're going to have more to talk about next quarter. So
stop me any time.
Maybe experiences.
I'll touch on a couple just because the pictures tell a story, right? So for any fishermen out there, I myself, when I was in South Dakota, got back into trout fishing in a very big way. We have brown trout, rainbow trout, and salmon. You've got to think they haven't been fished by international visitors for what's going to be 2 seasons. So traditionally they are a challenge to catch, but standing there in gin clear waters and these backdrops, it doesn't really matter if you don't catch a fish as long as you tell a good story. But now, yeah, hopefully they haven't been fished, and so they'll be more accessible to get those trophy fish than ever. Be remiss to show New Zealand without talking about experiencing the real Middle Earth. So film tourism has been huge for the country. There's some special permissions in place at the moment. The likes of James Cameron resides in New Zealand, so Avatar 2, 3, and 4 are being made in New Zealand as we speak. Along with some other blockbusters I can't mention, but that's going to help showcase our landscapes, excite some people, and get them down there in the future as well. I'll just touch on a couple more. Māori culture, obviously a distinctly New Zealand thing, and it's designed in a way where it's not intimidating. They're very friendly people. We talk about having this term kaitiakitanga, where they're guardians. They want to share the land, they want to enrich the land, they want to make sure it's better for future generations, and they do that by keeping the culture alive. And one of the ways they can keep the culture alive is by welcoming visitors in, sharing the culture, keeping the language alive, and keeping the next generation up to speed. So there's lots of hands-on ways to interact with Māori culture, and they're very assimilated into New Zealand society anyway, so you don't have to go out of your way to have an experience to be in contact with this. And wellness, I'll leave it at wellness just because it's a nice spectacular shot to leave up on your screen there. I think a lot of people have taken the time during the pandemic to think about mental and physical wellness, and you don't need to leave that behind when you go on vacation. We have a large amount of wellness retreats, and they're not all yoga and green juices. They're more about kind of utilizing the landscapes around you just to feel at peace and at ease. And although you're on vacation, you can keep up some of those mindfulness and stretching and other practices, or you can learn new ones and let the landscapes be the hero and send those Instagram photos back to make others jealous at the same time.
Oh, yes, that's awesome. And I know we have just hit the edge of the iceberg, which is why we want you back for another talk coming up in February or March. And we'll definitely be announcing that going forward. And I mean, we haven't talked about glowworms. We haven't talked about whales. We haven't talked about the Maori culture. You just touched on that. I feel like that is essential. You have to see that when you go to New Zealand. And maybe that's just, I'm a little jaded and sometimes kind of persuasive. So, but that's, I mean, we haven't even talked about a tenth of the stuff you can do in New Zealand.
No, but nice to scratch the surface. Nice to get you guys excited. Just a reminder, stay in touch with Janine and her team. We'll be keeping them well informed with what's happening with that border scenario. With lead times, it is a long lead time destination, especially as we're not sure what that connectivity is going to look like. We've got some people who obviously haven't been able to go for the last couple of years, so a bit of build up of demand. So if it's something you are thinking about, start that conversation with Janine and the team sooner rather than later, even just to plant the seed so she knows that she's aware when we do get that border signal or that reopening date that you're on the list, and we can ensure you get to get down and enjoy some of this for yourself.
Yep. You definitely, and thanks Hayden, because that is a great point, because it's just like, it's a great destination. It's probably a bucket list for a lot of people, but it's something that you don't plan 3 to 6 months out. This is a little bit longer planning period for a destination like New Zealand, just because availability, making sure we hit all the right spots, make reservations in time. So it's just one of those stunning places you have. That should be on your list if you like to, if you like a little bit of adventure, or even if you just want to have wine, it doesn't matter. It's just one of those must-see places.
Couldn't agree more. Well, I'd like to wrap up by just saying kia kaha. So in Māori, kia kaha means stay strong. We've got through this. New Zealand will reopen. We look forward to welcoming international visitors such as yourself back down there and working with great partners like Janine in order to do so.
Awesome. Hayden, thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. I look forward to the next talk in the first quarter. For everyone else, have a great rest of your Tuesday, and we look forward to seeing you at our next Travel Talk Tuesday.